Hello, friends. This is the Alphalist podcast. I am your host, Toby. The goal of the Alphalist podcast is to empower CTOs with the info and insight they need to make the best decisions for their company. We do this by hosting top thought leaders and picking their brains for insights into technical leadership and tech trends. If you believe in the power of accumulated knowledge to accelerate growth, make sure to subscribe to this podcast. Plus, if you're an experienced CTO, you will love the discussion happening in our Slack space where over 600 CTOs are sharing insights, or visit one of our events. Just go to alphalist.com to apply. Welcome to the Alphalist podcast. I am your host, Toby, and today with me is, let's say, an e-commerce tech giant.
Okay, thank you.
It's Aron Spohr. I pronounce it very German, as we're both from Germany. And he is the CTO of Flaschenpost, which is one of the bigger success stories, or if not the biggest success stories, if you look at the exit volume of 1 billion to Dr. Oetker in the last years. Thanks for being my guest here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Maybe before we talk about, drink delivery and so on, you can tell us a bit more like how you got into that. Like what is your story? How did you become a nerd?
Oh yeah. So I guess this applies to many nerds actually out there. It started in my childhood. Yeah. So I started with a Commodore 64 when I was like 8 or 9 years old. I had my first modem to go online with that Commodore 64. That was when I was 93. And at the time there was something called BTX, which was like a proprietary system by Deutsche Telekom or Bundespost at the time, not so sure. But that's how I got online at the time. So it was no internet. But so that's how I started. And I don't know if you have that in your notes, but there was one more thing I did with Deutsche Telekom later on when I was a little older.
Yeah, right. If you Google your name, you see like something crazy from the 90s popping up.
Yes.
You hacked Deutsche Telekom or what?
Yes. First of all, I'm glad that the internet wasn't that big at the time in 98. It was there, but it was not as big as today. Otherwise, there would be so much evidence today of what happened. And I also have to say, today you wouldn't win a Blumentopf with what I did at the time. But what happened was I was 16 years old, and at the time you were able to download and install special software from Deutsche Telekom. You would install on your PC. Basically, it was a desktop application,
like the client application. With Internet Explorer baked in and stuff.
The kind of stuff you had to install to go online, and the software asked you to save your credentials, as in your password and your login data, and you could even save your online banking data, like the tons and stuff like that you used at the time. So crazy stuff, and they took that data and they kind of encrypted it and stored it on your hard disk drive. And I found out that the encryption is very weak of that
it was
data.
Only kind of encrypted. Yeah,
exactly. It was obfuscated, I would say. It was an obfuscation, and you could change just a few bytes in the configuration file, or actually in the executable file, and then this software would decrypt any configuration you would give her, and would tell you the credentials of anyone if you have the configuration file. And in order to get the configuration file, I wrote a little Trojan horse kind of software. It was a great tool, by the way. You could block advertisements with it and stuff like that. And people loved it. It actually went on some CDs at the time and magazines and so on. But it had this little routine which would give me the configuration. And then I was able to prove, because you obviously need to prove it, that it's a security problem there. Yeah? And I went to the press at the time and I thought, hey, this is so cool. I can prove it. It's not good and so on. And I thought it's if I do this right, it may be in the CT, computer magazine here in Germany. And I thought, if you do that, then this is a great achievement. And it actually made the evening news.
Wow.
So, and as I said, this kind of stuff happens on a daily basis today. It's nothing unusual, but at the time it was like a crazy story. There's this 16-year-old kid doing this to Deutsche Telekom. And that's how I kind of created a brand, a little brand around myself. And just to finish that story, because it's so funny, is that Deutsche Telekom at the time said, okay, we're going to fix this problem. We're going to make it secure now. Obviously, that's a big claim, right? And they had like a software upgrade a couple of weeks later, and they changed the way they obfuscated the data, but they didn't solve the problem, obviously. And I was able to prove again, guys, that's still a problem. So, and that got a lot of media attention, and that's kind of how I got like my first jobs, actually, and that's how I started back at the day, basically.
So, but Telekom didn't offer you a job?
No, they the best thing they offered was to beta test their software, which wasn't
exciting.
Yes, it wasn't that appealing. Actually, if they've done their job right, then they should have offered me at least like a trainee position or something like that. I think that would have been the right thing to do, also for the media attention, just for that, not for me, but just for that. Yeah. But unfortunately, they didn't. Yeah. But also, that being said, today we are best friends. Flaschenpost is a big customer of Deutsche Telekom. We do a lot of things with them and so on. So everything is forgiven. But it's part of my history. Yes. Yeah.
So, what was the first program that you wrote? Was that the Trojan horse or?
So it must have been something on the Commodore 64, which has this beautiful language called BASIC. I vaguely remember writing like a file manager for the Commodore 64.
Ooh,
yeah.
Sounds as if it's more than 20 go to 10.
It's also, if you think about it, I don't know why I didn't try games or something like that, but I guess this is what you do when you're a 10-year-old.
Right,
creating
it's
a file manager.
Nerdy with 10 years, yes.
Very much, yes.
Okay. Yeah, cool. And then you worked for Yahoo and the fashion area, and now you're with grocery, right?
Yes.
What is different, or why did Dr. Oetker acquire it for 1 billion?
Well, first of all, it was a great deal, right? For both sides, right? And I also have to say that Dr. Oetker, they had their own venture in this area called Toast Express. And they were, as far as I remember, they were definitely in Berlin. They were in some other cities as well. And they were in some cities where we were too. So like in Hanover. There was this real competition going on between them and us. But they were smaller and they started later. And we were really, really far when it came to beverage delivery at the time. And they realized that. And they thought, or I guess this was one of the thoughts, that, hey, we can spend more and more money with Toast Express trying to compete here with Flaschenpost, or we just bring them together. Right. And that's what they did. And I also truly believe that they see a lot of potential in this market. And I think with no doubt, if you think about it, it's also very interesting for them to be closer to the actual consumers of their products or of grocery products.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the key problem of most FMCG brands as well, right?
Yeah.
That you kind of want to close the loop, but you can't.
Yes.
Okay. And how do you compare to all the like huge loss-making machines like Gorillas? Why does your model work and their model potentially not so much?
I think there are many reasons. I think first of all, we had a little more time to prepare, and we had this great benefit actually that we were able to start with beverages only. Beverages are so thankful when it comes to many things, including processes and so on. And they have another huge advantage. I mean, first of all, when you do beverages, it's a lot of work for people to actually buy your beverages at a Getränkemarkt here in Germany. You have to carry all these things, and you have to carry them home. Maybe you live in an old house where there is no lift or no elevator. You have to carry these things. So that, first of all, is great if you say, hey, I can replace that. And I really understand it because it's effort. Yeah. And the other thing is the deposit system and the deposit cycle in Germany, right? So when you drunk all the things, all the beverages at home, and you have all these empty crates there, then obviously you want to get rid of them at some point in time. And the easiest thing to do is just to reorder with Flaschenpost. So, and I would say we perfected this game, and we were able with this to come in a lot of households. Yeah, and we were able to establish our brand, and based on that, we started with the groceries. So you can still order all your drinks if you want, but obviously you can also, on top of that, order your groceries. And because we have this setup, and because it was this, so we had to have vans and not bicycles and things like that. We were able to handle larger amounts and so on and so on. And we already have the contact to the customers. So I think this is one of the biggest advantages we basically have in the market to answer that. And the other thing is, if you just ask for the comparison, so what differentiates us is that the quick commerce place, they have a small collection of things you can order. And obviously that makes sense because it's part of their business model. To be fast, you cannot choose from a few thousand products. That doesn't work, right? Apart from even ordering a whole crate of beer or something like that. So they have to be very small. And then there are those other players, the bigger ones you didn't mention, which have like a huge variety of products, but you can order like for next week or something like that. So, and we kind of sit in the middle, or we try to bring both worlds together. So we are relatively fast. We can deliver today, no problem. We can deliver in the next 2 hours if you want us to. But we also have this big collection of items you can order with us. So you can literally replace all the groceries you usually need to shop in a week with us and order that, and you have that in a short amount of time. So this is where we sit. And I think this is a very nice spot, plus the stability and all the positive legacy we've built with the beverages really helps here.
So beverages are like SaaS in a way, right? It's like a subscription.
Yes, it is subscription, absolutely. And imagine you would try that in another country where there was no deposit cycle. So the deposit cycle really, really helps here. And obviously, it's not even good for the business. I mean, keep in mind, it's good for the environment after all, still, right? That's also a good point about it. Yeah.
So tell us a bit more about your tech stack, maybe, just without like further questions. What is your tech stack and why is it?
The why is not so easy actually, but the tech stack is we have Vue.js mainly on the front end side of things for. Is it a single page application? We are still transitioning, to be honest, but this is where we want to go. And obviously, we also have some native apps for iOS and for Android, but they are utilizing this single page application we have. So it's a mix. It's a hybrid.
Just a container,
yes,
in a way.
Yes, it's a hybrid. So some features are native, and some come actually from the web view. And so that's on the front end side of things, and on the back end, we mainly have, with some exceptions, .NET or C#, if you will. And this is something which I find really interesting because the last time I came in touch with .NET and C# was like, 15 years ago or so when it came out. I remember vaguely, and that was a different world because people then at the time, I think, used it to create desktop applications and stuff like that. And you wouldn't normally think about using that. Or I definitely didn't think about using that to create like e-commerce and a service-oriented architecture and these kind of things. And when I joined Flaschenpost about 3 years ago, I saw this. The decision was already made to build everything in there, and I was like, "Oh, I don't know." And I had a look, and I actually was pleasantly surprised because C# is a beautiful syntax. It's very easy to learn. It's very easy to understand, I find. And you can even, most importantly, with .NET, you can compile to Linux, and then you can Dockerize everything, and then you can use Kubernetes
with Mono, the Mono, or was it called Mono?
I think so. I'm not the expert there, but I think you're right. Yeah, and it's stable. It works really well, regardless of how complex your project is. Yeah? Because I thought, it's like those things. Yeah, you use it, but then it's too complex, or you're using this weird library here and there. No, it just works, and we are doing this very successfully, and it's really cool. So the why to answer the why, it was there. And we didn't change it because we thought, hey, actually, no, you know what? It's good. It's great. And we can work with it. And we can even help people if they don't have experience with .NET and C#. We can even help them to be productive very, very quickly.
Yeah. So I mean, it's type safe. It's object oriented, easy to read, a bit like Java, I guess, right?
Yes, it is. It is similar. Absolutely, it is similar. You have. So my Java knowledge is also a bit old, but you have a lot of freedom. You don't have so many constraints, and this is actually quite important to me because I'm kind of a script kiddie, I would say. I love to hack things. This is why some people hate me in the organization, in a good way though. But sometimes I just hack things and say, hey, you see, it's working. To prove a point. But I thought, okay, as a script kiddie, C# is probably not the right choice. You would probably still need something like Python, Node.js, something like that. But you know what? It's actually pretty cool. It's awesome. It works. And to having things in a typed manner, you can actually hack even faster. So, it's good fun. I can recommend it still. Every now and then I do stuff.
And you don't need to write tests and stuff, right?
No, because I don't have the time anyway, but absolutely. I mean, it's hacky, but for some reason, I always thought you cannot use it to create some kind of hack, but you can, and it works pretty well. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's also like not a very common setup for let's say typical. I mean, you're not from Berlin, you're from Münster, but like one of those typical startups, right? You wouldn't go for .NET straight away if you don't have like a Windows application or stuff like that.
Yeah,
right?
I guess. But maybe this is old thinking. Yeah, maybe the two of us are just too old.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Maybe we're too old.
So, but I agree with you. That would have been my thought too. But if you ask me, I can really recommend it. It's a very clean language. You have a huge ecosystem. It's so easy to get into. You have tons of books you can use. I think it's really good. And keep in mind, you can compile to Linux. That's, to me, one of the most important things.
Yeah. And plus, like, what else? I mean, Kubernetes, I think you mentioned.
Yes.
So, but it sounds relatively simple, right? Is it that simple?
Well, the setup, the tech stack itself is probably simple because this is the kind of stuff we are using. I said we have some exceptions. One exception is with our PIM system that's actually based on PHP. So we have a little PHP team there. But since everything is service oriented, it actually doesn't matter so much that they're on a different stack there. We can work with that. And when we come to the data science things, obviously there's Python, but there's also something called Julia. Julia is a mathematical heavy kind of language. I never got my head around to really look into it, but we have one of our algorithms is actually written in Julia. So that's like probably the best fit for the kind of stuff we are doing there.
Okay. Coming to the complexity or the core of your business layer, let's say, right?
Yes.
I mean, we spoke before about like business versus tech layer, and that you'd like ideally spend lots of time in the business layer,
yes,
and create value.
Yes.
Like, where do your people create value, and what makes your problem complex? Maybe
Yes.
I mean, just ordering drinks online doesn't sound so complex for lots of people, I guess, but it is.
It's good. It's good that it's not complex, because we don't want it to be complex for the customer, obviously, right? But it's a really good point. As you mentioned earlier, I did pure e-commerce projects before, right? I was in fashion, I did furnitures and stuff like that. And the main part there is 80% is, hey, there is this web shop and you need to connect to your warehouse and stuff like that. And they need to fulfill stuff and so on. But it's actually the web shop and you need to be online, right? With the business we have here, it's so much more complex. Obviously, we need to have a working and a really good online shop where you can order things. But this is only one part of the whole journey, because all the logistics happening in the background. There is this trip planning thing, which is this Julia written thing. There is ton of stuff which needs to happen in the warehouse itself. So the software used in the warehouse and what to pick and these kind of things, this is all custom-made stuff we created. So you need to have that. Then the software the driver is using is also custom application we created. All this needs to be working, and it needs to be working all the time. So you cannot have an outage here.
And it has to work offline and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Right?
So you have all that. And then also what you have to keep in mind is we have 20,000 or more than 20,000 employees. Mostly, obviously, drivers and warehouse workers, but that's huge. So you need systems also to manage this workforce. So we have like shift systems and so on. And, we want to be an attractive employer to those people as well. So you can change your shift if you want to. And we have systems for that. You can just log in and check, when is my next shift? Or I need to cancel, I need to move, or I'm going to switch with this guy here and so on. You can do all these things. And they need to be in place, obviously. There's also, obviously, again, data science involved in all of these steps. And these are all the systems which need to be up and running all the time in order to actually do our business. And then also keep in mind that every warehouse we have at least 34 at this point in time, every warehouse needs to be redundantly connected to the internet and to our systems too. So you have that as well, which is something you typically don't have this problem with a pure e-commerce website. But here you have, and an outage of 10 minutes is already a huge problem, because we have this promise of 2 hours. So if some system doesn't work for just 10 minutes, then you already lose 10 minutes of our promise. Not good, right? So the overall system is huge. So there is definitely complexity. Yeah.
And the driver software, that's, I guess, like Android, or
yes.
Is that and that they use those Zebra devices, right? Those professional barcode scanners.
Exactly, that's what they are using. So they have Zebra devices, and there's an Android system on it, and the app is written in. That's actually a good question.
Java or something.
No, it's even worse. It's this Microsoft thing, Xamarin.
Xamarin.
And this is being ported to Microsoft MAUI or something, or this is at least what Microsoft wants to happen. Obviously we have to look at it and see, does that still fit to what we're doing? At some point in time, we thought, hey, it's good. It's the same tech stack and everything. You can reuse things. But then probably a lot of people would agree. Then in most cases, but this kind of stuff you can reuse. It's actually not that much. Is it really worth it to have such a unusual tech stack here? But that's it's actually one of the crazier things we have. I have to say, to make this picture complete, the picking apps and these kind of things the warehouse workers are using, they are written in Kotlin for Android. So there we are, a little more modern, I would say. Yeah.
So with 20,000 people, you're then also like Europe's biggest gym, I would say. I always feel very sorry if like a poor guy has to climb up all the stairs to my flat at night, which often happens. It's Yeah, you don't need a gym anymore.
I hope you give
the
it.
Drivers.
Still, I hope you give a good tip.
I do.
Good.
So yeah, then I know a little more about the complexity of tech. You mentioned that like the warehouses have to be like redundantly connected. Is that like 4G or 5G, or is that like fiber? Or
it depends. It's different from warehouse to warehouse. So in some cases, it is actually 5G or as LTE as the backup, and the main line is ideally fiber optics. But in some places, you can't get that. You have to see that in some places we have this huge hall. Where we can put all our stuff in. But then when it comes to connectivity, you have those old copper lines there lying around. And that's all you get. Okay, so then it has to be DSL and it has to be some 5G or LTE backup there. And that's how we do it. But we really try to get fiber optics wherever we can here. Yeah.
One thing there where your business could fail in the future would potentially be drone delivery, right? I guess that never will come for Flaschenpost.
But if so, then I think we are in a good position to just offer that as well, actually. Because keep in mind, you need to have the warehouses and everything. You need to have like a place where the drones start from, right? We could do that.
Yeah. The question is just if you can carry all that heavy weight.
I don't know if that's going to be even ever legal in Germany, though. Let's see.
Me neither. So, but coming back to business versus tech layer.
Yes.
Like,
good point.
where do your people ideally spend their time, and how do you manage to make sure they do?
So there are many interesting points in this question. So maybe first of all, I think I kind of mentioned that, but Flaschenpost started with building actually almost everything by itself. Yeah. So whatever service you need, everything was built from scratch and by itself, which is something you can do. And I think it's fine, especially if you don't know where your business is heading. So you're flexible and so on. I think that was at the time the right decision which was made. But today we see that there is a lot of legacy we have to deal with and we have to handle with. And obviously a lot of time is also spent there. And or to be more clear, on things which don't have an effect on the customer or no immediate effect, no direct effect. And this is something we are learning right now, that we are saying, hey, you know what? For instance, the shopping cart in our web shop is something we always had on our list. Let's refactor this. This is such a nice project. It's so much fun. We have so many great ideas. But to be honest, this is something the end consumer, the customer, would never recognize, would never realize that we did that. And we would be happy, and obviously the system would be cleaner, more stable, and maybe the development would be faster in the future, which is still a good investment. However, the question here is, do we really need to build something like this ourselves, or can we just buy it? Because Flaschenpost will never be mentioned in the media as in, hey, they are so successful because they created the cart service themselves. No way. Yeah. So, and this is one of the decisions we just took recently, actually, to buy a component for the shopping cart and use that even as a software as a service. So we don't even need to host it and everything. And I'm quite happy with that. And this is a transition we are doing right now. A colleague of mine just recently said, hey, but Aron, this is like a paradigm change to Flaschenpost. I said, maybe it's not that big, but we should look at all the places where we can do that, because this means if we have less to do on things the customer cannot even see, we can move those resources back to, I call it the business layer, where actually you do have a positive effect on the customer and where the customer can see, hey, something changes here. And this I find really, really important. And I think this is really, I would even say, a problem in a lot of companies, that we try to reinvent the wheel so many times. And I think this is not good, and we shouldn't do that.
Okay. And so you're using like some sort of a headless e-commerce shop now, or?
Yeah, I can tell you, actually, we chose commerce tools.
Okay.
We had a phase of validating this and trying things out and talking to them, and we even challenged them with some interesting requests and questions we had. But overall, we concluded, hey, this makes sense and we should do this. And we decided for them. And we also figured out that, hey, no way we're going to do like a big bang and transfer everything over. We don't even know if we want to do that, like everything. So we said, hey, we need a plan. And the shopping cart is definitely one of those things we always wanted to have, like brand new. Plus, it's actually a very good starting point, because from there you can move on. You can think about other things you may want to migrate or maybe not, really depending on how much we need there and how much is actually really needed. But a card is a card. There is nothing very specific. Not
Normally
even
there's nothing fancy about it. Like the only reason against it, from my perspective, I mean, first, it sounds like much nicer than managing it all on your own. But in a way, you introduce like an external dependency, and that can come with like many downsides as well. I mean, it always has to be available, and like that's like technical reasons, like availability.
Yes.
And then also commercial reasons, like I don't know, like one typical thing, like if a private equity company buys a SaaS tool, then it typically increases the prices by 100%, right?
Yes. So you need a good contract. Make sure to negotiate well for these cases, SLAs, and also what happens after the minimum contract length and stuff like that. There's definitely one thing I can recommend. And the other thing is that, I mean, you're right. The other thing I would see is vendor login. It's like, hey, you're really dependent on them. What if they don't exist anymore or whatever? But you also gain something by migrating to something like this, because you have to keep in mind they have a clean API because they have to. It's their product, right? Mm-hmm. And when we have to adopt everything on this clean API they're offering, and which is well documented and everything, then this is already a win, because we start to separate what is actual business logic from actual core logic. Because today, in the legacy we have, I can tell you it's a big mix. You cannot separate it. You cannot separate the core from the business logic. And that's bad. And this is what makes us slow today. And just by doing this exercise, moving there, we have to separate that out. We have to create a very thin and clean business layer, which is using these APIs. So, and if for some reason, after some point, we say, hey, this doesn't work for us anymore, then we know exactly what we need to build, because we have the API specs. And then we have this clean separation. About you could implement the server side yourself. You could theoretically implement it yourself, but maybe they make a good offer and you say, hey, you know what? We stay. And that's their business model. And I think this is fair. And this is what I'm saying. But even then, even if you move back and say, hey, we only need half of it, let's create it our own, no worries, because you did this clean separation. That already is an exercise really worth it.
But through .NET and Vue, you already had like kind of a clean separation, I assume, at least, or
yes. So obviously front end and back end was separated, and that already was a good layer. But you have to keep in mind, when you have like so many different services in the background, and coming back to this card example again, then there is a mixture. Again, still of business logic in the card as well as core logic, and it makes the whole code base a lot bigger than just having the business logic.
So is then your theory, if you fully migrate over to commerce tools, that you don't have to focus on the backend that much anymore, but you can focus on optimizing the tools, obviously? Like that I guess is like where you can win the most, right? If you can make, I don't know, 20,000 workers like 10% more efficient, that would be great.
10% would be massive. 10% would be massive. But here, fair point again. I was just talking about the web shop, but it would definitely help. I think it's so important that the resources you have, you use them wisely, and you use them as much as you can on business stuff, which really makes a difference for you, and which really define what your company does. And with the workers and with the drivers, if we just find a way to optimize 1 minute per driver per day, that's huge. that's a whole thing on its own. That's massive, and this is why we invest a lot there. This is where the data science comes in. This is where the trip planning comes in. The trip planning is so it is complex, but in a good way. Yeah. But there are so many parameters going into that just to optimize really just like the last minute of the driver and make him more efficient, because it's a huge lever. Lever. And if it was 10%, I tell you, if you know how to do it, I better take you with me. So have a look, but 10%, no way. We are, I think, optimizing after some digits behind the comma at the moment, but still, this is so worth it.
And you then also have, like, I don't know, a North Star metric for the team optimizing the drivers or the tours and so on. So that is like your main optimization area, or is the web shop? I mean, I can imagine like the front end of the web shop is then like a bit more of secret sauce, and there you do A/B testing, and then you do tour testing.
Yes.
And, okay.
So there's many places. I think this is where your original question actually was. So there are many places where you can make a difference and actually can improve the business. Obviously, I mean, all those basics, I would say, as you just mentioned, A/B testing and so on in the web shop. Yes, definitely. But then optimizing our algorithms and our processes in the warehouse, right? And how can things be put together, and also the software all our workers are using. Just if we improve the UX of the applications we've built there, just a little bit, just by moving a button further to the top or something like that. And if this is 30 seconds per day for a warehouse worker, awesome, really good. And this is what makes it so interesting. Yeah, and we have similar things when it comes to managing the workforce with the shifts, or how we process the invoices, stuff like that. Obviously, big part of that are basic things you obviously need to do. But those are the places where you can really still further optimize and get something out of it, especially the processes and how they are connected to the IT.
And how do you, like in the real world, how do you measure the workers? I mean, do you have someone for mirroring? I mean, sorry, no, not the measurement of like the individual, but how do you measure the effectiveness of the process? Do you do like mirroring with them? Like, do you sometimes go with a worker on tour and just write down what he's doing or she's doing? Or
actually, yes. My next appointment is Monday next week, actually, to do exactly that and see how it's going. And a lot of people from the leadership team do that from time to time, which is really, really important also to listen to them, because obviously they use all the stuff on a daily basis, so they can let you know, hey, how are things doing? Apart from that, obviously, we have product teams and product managers, and they are talking there as well. But I think it's really important that you do this undercover boss thing, but not undercover. They know who you are with them on a regular basis. So this is one part, and the other part is the data. So whatever happens in the warehouse, every step is obviously being recorded. Obviously GDPR compliant, to be fair,
non-PII.
Yeah, but obviously it's we don't know who is it. We just have this whole bunch of data, and we can see, even if we tried something out a little bit here, a little bit there, we can see, did that have a positive impact on the overall effectiveness or not? And since we are so big with so many workers, you can actually get interesting results relatively fast. This is also a big advantage. Imagine you only have like 5 workers. This will take forever to find out. Yeah.
And in the front end, and then coming back to the shop, you then do A/B testing and stuff like that, or do you want to do that? I mean, I know your app for a while, so I'm not sure if you really do it.
Interesting. Okay. So we do A/B testing, but we could and we should do a lot more, to be totally and brutally honest here. And also, to be fair, we struggled a little bit with the app here and there. I think we are on the right path right now. But No. We definitely do A/B testing, and sometimes this is the thing. Sometimes you just don't see it. Yeah? So sometimes it's just about the order of the items and how they are placed. And it's just about the rank they have. Sometimes it's other smaller things. Yeah, and sometimes it's even bigger things. Yeah, and sometimes we find out, and this is actually quite interesting, that people get used to what they had all the time. And if you want to introduce a change, people don't like it. Yeah, and you have to either wait.
Shouldn't measure straight away.
Yeah, exactly. You need to wait. And this is quite interesting. So we had some really great ideas, and even after a long period of time, we figured actually people for some reason don't want it. Should we do it? Maybe not. Really depends on what it is. Yeah.
I remember me like using your app for a while, and there were like some small glitches every once in a while. Like I think like even once I wasn't able to order, or I had to reinstall the app or something crazy.
Where you were forced to an upgrade, I guess?
And
Did it tell you that?
I think I deinstalled. I had to deinstall it because it was not showing anything anymore. And that like also leads me to a question. Like you're using like a container and like a progressive web app in a way. Are you happy with that, or would you go another way if you could decide, like as of today? I mean, like most of your transactions will be app-based. So do you regret having a web application only, or do you think it's good? Be honest.
Let me think about it. So if we would start from scratch, then I would start mobile first and just do that. And then I guess it would be purely native, to be fair. But we have, and we started with the desktop version. So that's a fact, and people still use that a lot, especially in offices for some reason. Yeah. And so we have to maintain it. So the problem we had, because we tried other approaches as well, to have the app still purely native and everything. But the problem was that since we were doing so many A/B tests, for instance, and other things, with the way we present the items, how we present the prices, is it strike through and stuff like that, all those different things. It was a lot of work for the app team actually to catch up with what was happening in the other teams with the web shop. So we figured, that doesn't make sense because they always need to re-implement the same stuff. They're behind and so on. So we figured, let them use basically the same web view basically here. Yeah. And to be fair, I think it's just another way of representing or generating a view of the same stuff. So from a technical point of view, I find it very fair. And I would, if you have to have a desktop version, I would definitely do it again. Yeah. What I'm not so happy with is the way you can integrate that in your app, because that is tricky. You need to find a way to communicate between the native app or the container, if you just call it the container, with the web app and so on. And that's even more tricky than initially thought, to be honest. Yeah. But now, and we may have a few bugs here and there still, yes. But I would definitely stick to this strategy.
I also think that, like, as of today, like for an e-commerce store, I would absolutely do the same, right? I don't know about Gorillas, for example. I also think it's a web view. Like for most cases, it's just enough, right? I mean, it's just information, like delivering information, showing articles, showing items, and rendering. And I mean, the web is kind of okay with rendering, right?
Exactly.
Like a browser is okay for rendering.
Yes.
And then like there are so many tools for A/B testing and so on. So I think, like, maybe it's because I'm from the web, but and yes, Flutter is a nice framework. And there's so many nice frameworks out there for mobile. But in a way, you're like implementing the same thing twice, right?
Exactly.
Or exactly. 3 times. Like if you do different apps for Android and iOS, it's like not worth it.
I fully agree with you, and I think, hey, if you think about it, because you could have a discussion with your developers, and they'd say, hey, you know what? We should have some kind of descriptive language so that we can render it natively and we can render it on the web. And then if you take that 2 steps further, you end up with HTML.
You have HTML.
That's it. Yeah. So this is the point, right? But it has to work. It has to work well, obviously, and you shouldn't feel it. So the app should feel like an app. I fully agree with that. And I think we achieve that in some parts, definitely. But I give you another example, actually, in terms of flexibility. PayPal was offline the other week. So they had a problem. I don't know if you realized that they were offline with the PayPal Express checkout. And this is what we are using as well. They were offline like for 6 or 7 hours.
Wow.
So crazy stuff, right? Globally. I mean, really serious problems. So, and what did we do? We created something in Google Tag Manager, which would phase out the PayPal button and would explain to our customers, hey, PayPal has some problems. Please don't click here. Use some of the other payment methods. And it was implemented in 10 minutes or so with the Google Tag Manager. And obviously, because of that, it was visible in the app and on the web shop right away. And that was great. And this is, to me, like one of those great advantages you have if you have that on one platform and not like, oh yeah, but for the app, I don't know what we do for the app. It was never intended to have something like that for the app. And on the web, you can just hack that in with some JavaScript and it will happen.
Yeah. If you first have to change some Flutter code and release it to an app store, it wouldn't have worked out.
Yes,
right?
you could create a release, but the review by the app store could break.
Yeah. Okay. And I mean, for everything like A/B testing and so on, it must be better. And as of today, I think like the web really evolved, right? I remember like that once, like Facebook did the like really a huge push forward in moving like their native app to web. And they, like, I think Mark Zuckerberg personally wrote about it, that it was like a huge $1 billion mistake and so on. That's also 10 years ago, I would say.
Yes.
And maybe Facebook is a bit of a special case, as it's like more responsive in a way, but like more kind of a real native case, right?
Yeah.
While like e-commerce maybe is not.
Yeah, and especially when it comes to groceries. I mean, this is like, hey, I want to buy this. It's very simple. You want to get to the point where you just place the order, right?
Buy the same bottles again.
Yes. Ideally, yes. Right.
Yeah. And that also like, I think one area where you can win a lot is then CRM. But that's maybe more in the marketing teams, right? That you kind of remind me that my bottles are almost the bottle prediction tells you that my bottles are always empty and that I have to order new ones. And
yeah, I hope it's working well and it does fit. We have to do the same thing for groceries, though. It's like, hey, your cheese is empty.
Yeah, okay. That's
it's more complicated.
That's harder. So we touched the app fail, but before you told me that there was like one very funny tech fail a while ago, which I liked. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
It's very simple. So if you visit flaschenpost.de, right, we're gonna ask you for your zip code in order to find out if he can actually deliver to you, right? And we also have this little shop called bevbox.de. This is where we send liquor via mail, via Deutsche Post to entire of Germany, basically. So, and when you go on flaschenpost.de, you type in your zip code, and you may find out, hey, Flaschenpost, we are not delivering to you. And obviously, to save this customer who was very interested, we offered two things. So you could either sign up and say, hey, be notified when we deliver to your area. That's one thing. And the other thing is then, hey, but in the meantime, don't you want to have a look here in our liquor store, bevbox.de, right? So, and so far so good. Yeah, it's like, hey, you're disappointed, but have a drink, okay? The funny thing is, we used to have a jobs site for open positions, also as part of the web shop. And it took us a couple of days to realize that this zip model was actually also in place in front of this jobs portal. So imagine you're on Google and you're looking for a job and you see this one hit, hey, Flaschenpost, jobs, blah, blah, blah. And you click on it, you get asked for your zip code and it's like, nah, not for you. Do you want to have a drink instead? Yeah, so so that was a funny mistake.
Sorry, we don't have a job for you, but you can still buy a bottle of whiskey.
Yeah,
Please.
With best
we give
intentions.
You a discount.
With best intentions. Yeah, I don't know. So so obviously we removed that, and obviously no zip model is needed for applying to a job. But yeah, things like that happen. To be fair.
Okay. So we slowly come to the end. We spoke before. You have like a few good tips for CTOs. Do you maybe have like two to three good tips for the CTOs out there, like your recent learnings, your biggest learnings in the last years? What is worth sharing?
Yeah, so I would say definitely stay in touch with tech in some way. Maybe make it a hobby or so. Maybe you can challenge your teams here and there. I mean, it hugely depends, glaube ich, on the size of the teams you have and stuff like that. The other thing I would say is as a CTO, to be fair, don't listen to tips how to be a good CTO. Yes, because I can tell you why. It may drive you crazy, to be honest. I had to deal with this here and then because the role of the CTO is so individual, is so different from business to business, from your strengths, from your experience, from the colleagues, from the teams you have and everything. So it's highly individual. So don't get crazy. Don't listen to too many tips. Take what you think is suitable for you and use that. And don't try everything. Yeah. So CTO is very different from person to person, really. Yeah. And that also speaks for like follow your principles and build a boring tech stack sometimes, right? Yeah, even
because
even that.
The tech world is so exciting, right? You can try a lot.
Yeah, and I think maybe this is another good point. Actually, don't try to find the excitement in the tech stack itself. I mean, I can understand if you do, but the excitement actually lies, I find, in realizing what your business needs into tech, and then it's probably better to have something sustainable, something stable as a tech stack, and not something crazy. I think it's But again, CTOs differ, and your strategy may be different, or you may need to have a crazy tech stack because, I don't know, you need to find people or whatever reason you might have. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you're also building like something very, very unique and special, which is like not a web shop or
yes, I've heard that happens too,
but it rarely happens.
Yes.
Okay, thanks a lot. Then I still have a little surprise for you. So it's a bit similar to your telecom event, and I hope soon people connect me to like the big secret that I discovered in Flaschenpost, which is a surprise I have for you. So if you order like at Flaschenpost, you have like a moment where you can pick like the time of delivery.
Yes.
And if you click on that like with the inspector in your Chrome browser and you change the year, you can actually travel in time. I discovered. So you just change it from like tomorrow in the afternoon to the year 2006, which we do now. And we travel back in time and see you working at Yahoo back then as an engineering manager. And we now observe like little Aron for a while, and now you have the chance to whisper something into young Aron's ears. What would it be?
I think it would be relax. Yeah. As I mentioned before, sometimes you try to be the very best of yourself and even more. And I would say, yes, it's always good to be very demanding of yourself. That's fine, but don't overstress it. Yeah.
Okay. That's a good answer. Don't stress yourself.
Maybe you can relate. I think you can stress yourself, which is fine, but don't overdo it, right? So
okay, yeah. That's good. Then thanks a lot, Aron. Have a safe trip home on the train to Münster. which is a good trip, I heard.
Yes. When the train is on time,
productive.
it's perfect. 2 hours of concentration time, or even longer if Deutsche Bahn chooses to surprise me.
Fingers crossed for that. And yeah, thanks a lot for visiting. Have a great time. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Alphalist podcast. If you like this episode, share it with friends. I'm sure they love it too. Make sure to subscribe so you can hear deep insights into technical leadership and technology trends as they become available. Also, please tell us if there is a topic you would like to hear more about or a technical leader whose brain you would like us to pick. Alphalist is all about helping CTOs getting access to the insights they need to make the best decisions for their company. Please send us suggestions to cto@alphalist.com. Send me a message on LinkedIn or Twitter. After all, the more knowledge we bring to CTOs, the more growth we see in tech. Or, as we say on Alphalist, accumulated knowledge to accelerate growth. See you in the next episode.